We're ready.
Good to go.
Okay, gotcha. Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission to order. The time is 3:33. Please note that this meeting is being held in accordance with the applicable public meeting laws. Let us now proceed to the agenda. I determined that there is a quorum. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Keith?
Yes, we have a batch. So I got caught up. I did
Thank you.
March. There was a slight correction in May, July, September 26th, and November 21st. So if there are any other additions or corrections, we're all caught up now.
Okay, great. If there are no further, does anyone have any questions about the minutes? I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion passes. Now, do we have any claims or purchase orders for payment?
Thanks. Yes, we're unable to get claims processed in time, but we may be able to do that next week. So my request today is that you approve the two invoices, my invoice and the Clark Quinn invoice, and then authorize the controller to approve the claims as soon as they're able to do so. That would be my request today.
Are there any questions? I will entertain a motion to approve the claims and purchase orders as presented.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the claims and purchase orders as stated by Keith, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It looks like the ayes have it. Let's move to old business. We don't have any old business. The next item on the agenda is new business. We have our executive director's report and the presentation of information to overlapping taxing units. It's all yours.
Great, thank you. Yes, you're going to hear next, and you have a detailed packet from Baker Tilly. So, in short, I thought I'd summarize the year in review. Thanks again for the opportunity. I think the two biggest things were done by partner government entities, certainly the launch of the Purple Line through that covers our redevelopment district and city, and then the work we're seeing by NDOT on Pendleton Pike and the medians. I think those are the two highlights for my year. And then thank you for the journey we've gone on discovery and sort of identifying some of our top targets, notably finding a great tenant for Monarch for our community in that building and the parcel in front of that land, and then identifying some of our top targets for acquisition and potential redevelopment, and finding those partners that want to move to our city and where we can possibly locate them on Pendleton Pike. I think for me, that's the highlight that I've enjoyed going on. And I think the completion of some of the things we started will be our task for next year. Of note, the overlay district on zoning and new standards and use for Pendleton Pike, and then executing our plans to landscape the medians, and then potentially finishing Records Street reclassifying, and then working on development plans to help the traffic through the trades district. That's what I'm looking forward to. And then we're going to hold me to some public art and restaurant promotion plans. Our Pike Bazaar idea, or sort of our goal to visit restaurants and stores along the Pike. And so I look forward to rolling out those initiatives next year. And thanks again for the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and just say on behalf of the board that we are very pleased with your leadership as director. We see this institution moving in the right direction, and we're really excited. I drive down Pendleton Pike every single day, and I know that the best is yet to come, and I just want to say thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments from board members on Mr. Johnson's presentation? All right, moving on to the presentation of information to overlapping taxing units by Baker Tilly.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'd like to introduce our new city financial partners on this task. If you wanted to roll through your work, and we have some new communications tools and some handy equipment, so I can flip as we
Wow, that's
as you
pretty neat.
present too.
Sounds good. Thank you, Keith, and good afternoon, Redevelopment Commission members. My name's Andy Mauser with Baker Tilly. Matt Georges here with me as well. Matt's one of my consultants that's kind of helped me prepare this information, and certainly be helping with things going forward. So, newly engaged with the Redevelopment Commission, but we're excited to help you out going forward. I know we've got a few tasks. One of the first things we did want to accomplish is an annual presentation. So this is something that was actually mandated by the state a few years ago. So each year redevelopment commissions in the state of Indiana have to hold a meeting open to the public and any overlapping taxing units. And you have to discuss the budget, the long-term plan, and the impacts of your TIF areas. So this is our attempt to meet that requirement, but then this is really meant to be a good reference document for you as well. I think we've got 26 slides. I'll try to go through fairly quickly, but definitely feel free to stop me with any questions as we go. First few slides just have an agenda, contact information, and again, myself, Andy, and then Matt. Don't hesitate to reach out, certainly, if there's any questions on your TIF areas, any opportunities, projects, things like that. We're always available for discussions. Slide 5, I'll maybe start there, does show kind of big picture how TIF areas operate. So TIF areas really have two layers. One is what's known as an economic development area, and that's really where the dollars can be spent. And then within the economic development area, you can have one or more allocation areas, and that's where the dollars are captured from. The way your areas are set up, you have two economic development areas. You have Pendleton Pike, which then has two allocation areas within it, and then you have the Meyer Plastics area, which is its own economic development area. But again, the Pendleton Pike area does have the two separate allocation areas. Next slide just shows kind of the progress of how a TIF area works. When an area is established, that base assessed value is created, and what you capture is any growth that occurs above that base assessed value. Once the area matures, gets to the end of its statutory lifespan, which is 25 years for new TIF areas, all that assessed value at that point is returned back to the tax base. So as we look at your TIF areas, you know, yours are somewhere in the middle of this graph where they've been established for a number of years. They're starting to generate. You hopefully will continue to have growth within the areas, and then that assessed value will be returned back to the tax base of the city and the schools and everyone else here in the near future. Next slide just shows the TIF calculation, the mechanics of how that works. If I'm a taxpayer within one of your TIF areas, I don't necessarily know that I'm paying my taxes to a TIF district, but as I pay my taxes, a calculation is done at the county level, and that allocates money to the tax base, so that includes the county, the schools, the library, and then a portion that represents the growth. That's what's then generated as TIF and comes to you as the Redevelopment Commission. Permitted uses of TIF on slide 8. You know, traditionally, TIF had to be used for capital projects, and it had to be things that were in, serving, and benefiting the TIF areas. In the last few years, we've seen really an expansion in the permitted uses of TIF. So we've seen the ability to start funding public safety projects. That can be purchasing fire trucks, building police stations, things like that. Recreation facilities, a lot of communities starting to use it for parks, trails, quality of life type improvements. And then more recently, the ability to start using TIF for police and fire capital and operating. But really, police and fire, public safety are your only legal uses of TIF for operating purposes. Otherwise, it does typically need to be capital.
Gotcha.
And then slide 9 just shows a little bit of kind of history of the lifespan of TIF areas. TIF areas that were set up before 1995 have what were unlimited lifespans. There's since been caps put on those. TIF areas set up between 95 and 2008 have 30-year lifespans, and then any TIF areas that are created post-2008 have 25-year lifespans. And if you were to look at creating any residential TIF areas, those would have a 20-year lifespan rather than the full 25 that you get with traditional TIF. So just kind of some general, you know, TIF guidelines there, and then I'll jump into your areas. The first one being the Pendleton Pike allocation area, which again is part of your larger Pendleton Pike economic or redevelopment area, excuse me. This area was created way back in 2007. It had a 30-year lifespan, so it will expire after 2038 tax collections. And for 2024, estimates about $623,000 per year. I know in talking with Keith, this is an area that's generated more than 600,000 in the past, so we are currently working to kind of dig into those TIF databases, figure out if there's parcels that are dragging down what's currently being generated, and there may be some potential to get that back up to 800,000-900,000 in the future. So that's something hopefully here in the next couple weeks. We actually got some information today. Hopefully we'll have kind of some further guidance on what can be done to improve things there within that TIF area. But then within that area, you do have two debt obligations outstanding. So there are 2011 bonds. Those are nearly paid off. You have $350,000 outstanding on those with a final payment in 2026. And those are paid from the Pendleton Pike TIF and then backed by a property tax. And then you also have more recent 2022 bonds, $2.5 million outstanding on the repayment on those through 2039. And those are also paid from the Pendleton Pike TIF. So the next slide really then just shows kind of what we estimate for TIF collections going forward. So assuming things stay at 2024 levels, you can see that's about a $9.3 million stream through the life of the TIF area. Your payments on the 2011 bonds, payments on the 2022 bonds, and then what we anticipate is remaining for additional bonding, other projects. And you can see that number currently is north of 300,000 and should improve here in the next couple of years as the 2011 bonds go away. So this is an area you do have some extra capacity to continue forward with projects, whether that's land acquisition, landscaping, kind of all those various things. Next slide, or next few slides, take a look at the Monarch allocation area. Again, this is also within the Pendleton Pike redevelopment area, but is its own allocation area. It was set up in 2008, right at the tail end of the 30-year lifespan, so it'll expire after you collect in 2039, and it currently should bring in about $666,000 for 2024. Just one outstanding obligation for the Monarch area, and that is your 2008 bonds. About $1.7 million remaining on those through 2033, and they are only payable from the Monarch TIF. And then as we flip to slide 17, you'll see again you're bringing in about $666,000. Payments on those are about $790,000. Keith did send us a copy of the bond transcripts, and want to spend a bit more time with those, but it does appear that you're only liable for the TIF generated within that area. So you'll see there's about $120,000 gap. Really, you're just responsible for paying the TIF that you bring in each year. So that is something I think, while we're showing a shortfall here, we don't anticipate that that's a shortfall that'll have to come from other resources. But definitely want to spend a bit more time just confirming that. And really the reason that area is short, obviously, is Monarch is no longer located in the building. This used to generate TIF not only from the building itself, but also from the equipment within the building. As that equipment no longer is there, the TIF has decreased, and that's why it doesn't fully cover the debt service any longer. And then for the Pendleton Pike area, we've listed a few projects. Again, you're not limited to these projects. These are just things you could use TIF dollars for. That could include property acquisition, utility improvements, landscaping for the medians along the pike, any economic development, redevelopment opportunities, or future debt issuance. So Keith, I don't know, any additional thoughts on projects there? Okay.
Let me jump in and,
Sure.
and add on the future projects. One of the things, in addition to potentially, culling or paring down the Pendleton Pike TIF area to eliminate properties that are dragging down that increment. And one of the things that we will need to consider doing next year is adding properties that you would consider for acquisition. That's a requirement of your declaratory resolution, your economic development plan. There are limited is what was included in the original adoption. So we would probably try to coordinate both of those happening at the same time. Eliminate paring out, parcels that are dragging down the value, and then also determining are there parcels or properties that you would want to acquire. So that would probably be a joint effort as we move through that. But that would be that'd be a 2025 goal. Now that we kind of have a better arms around obligations and future projects. So just wanted to add that to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. Those are a couple processes you could run simultaneously, so you're not going through, same approval process twice, as far as removing any parcels and then, adding a need that you would want to acquire in there as well. Last section is just the Meyer Plastics area. This one was set up in 2018. It therefore falls in the 25-year lifespan, so it'll last collect in 2043. Currently brings in about $217,000 a year, and that is from the building itself and then also the equipment within the building, as Meyer Plastics is a designated taxpayer there. And just one debt obligation outstanding, 2018 bonds, you've got a little over $2 million outstanding on those through 2043. And then as you'll see on slide 22, again, about $216,000 coming in. You've got payments annually just under $180,000, so that gives you a little bit of surplus, but currently a little under $40,000 a year to work with in that area. And then the last piece of the annual requirement, as I mentioned, is just an impact of any of your TIF areas. What we show here is within your 3 TIF areas that we just went through, you currently capture about $63 million of assessed value, and that generates across the 3 about $1.5 million in TIF. And a lot of times we hear, in communities around the state, you're capturing $1.5 million of TIF. If you didn't capture that TIF, is that $1.5 million that the schools are missing out on and all the other taxing units? And it's important to note that all those units are constrained by what's known as maximum levy. So just because they have more assessed value doesn't mean they're necessarily getting more tax dollars. And so what actually, passing through assessed value does is it would actually push tax rates down. And so what we show on the bottom half of this page is if you were to take that $1.5 million that you're currently capturing and you ended that tomorrow, well, that's not really $1.5 million for all those other taxing units. In fact, it's about $30,000 in actual dollars, and then it would push tax rates down slightly, but that's a pretty minimal impact we're showing of just under 3 cents. So again, pretty minimal impact on the tax rate, and TIF's really your best tool to continue to invest in these areas, get these areas to grow, and then eventually get that assessed value back to the tax base to begin with.
Gotcha.
So just a little bit of information there on the impacts, and then at the end we have just a couple slides on kind of the interrelationship of the overlapping taxing units. Again, what you do affects the city, the schools, the county. Everybody's related because if I'm a taxpayer in the city of Lawrence, I'm paying property taxes that go to all those various units. So what one unit does affect the others. And then slide 26 talks a little bit about the but-for test. So anytime you create a TIF area, that's a finding the Redevelopment Commission makes that this new development is not occurring but for the TIF that's being generated. And as I mentioned, TIF's a great way to leverage new investment and then use that to fund the infrastructure that's allowing that investment to occur in the first place. So I guess with that, that's really what I had for the presentation, but glad to answer questions or anything you'd like us to look
Do we have any
into for your
questions
areas.
for the gentleman?
Lots of information, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for presenting this to us and for the general public. And if we have any questions, we'll follow up.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
You too.
Thanks.
All
That,
right.
that completes sort of the cycle of the annual requirements by the state.
Gotcha.
It starts with the annual report, it then goes to all the notice that we want to use the revenue. There's the TIF neutralization, then there's that annual spending plan, and this is the 5th thing that we have to do every year. So that one slide on the impact, that's the mandatory part. That's the statutory requirement. The rest of it, very grateful for all the information and breakdown. We've covered some of that and did in the annual report, but it was great to see in this format. So thank you.
Fantastic. Seeing that there's no other business to come before the commission, I would like to take a point of personal privilege and just wish the city of Lawrence and the businesses and residents on Pendleton Pike happy holidays. I wish you a good time with your family, and I wish everyone a prosperous new year. I would take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of adjournments, please say aye.